We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get the ticket, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I am your host, Dave Bourne, and it is March 29th, 2016, Tuesday, and we are coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. And you can listen live on Spreaker.com and NonpartisanLibertyForAll.com, and to the archives immediately following the show on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, and SoundCloud. You can also find the archives on Stitcher, and I try to post them on Facebook as well. And if they're posted on Facebook, you can listen right through Facebook. It connects directly to Spreaker, which is pretty cool. So you don't have to go outside of Facebook. But I haven't been keeping up with that because it was automatically posting it to my page, and for some reason I can't get it to automatically post to my Nonpartisan Liberty for All Facebook page, and that's where I want them. Essentially, my page, I don't post anything to it anymore, except for the links to all of the sites. And, of course, you can find all the information about the show at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And you can find us on Facebook at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, as well as a few other pages, which you can find on nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. Sorry, I said Facebook, nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. You can find us on Facebook at Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and then you could find the other Facebook pages at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, as well as our Twitter account at NP Liberty for All. So just go to nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. It's the easiest thing to remember, and you can find all those links there, as well as other information and articles. I haven't been keeping up with the articles, unfortunately, but I plan to add more articles there because that is one of the things I wanted to focus on as well. But there are some articles there, original articles that I have written that I posted on there. On Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, as well as exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. And a lot of people want to label that whatever they want to label it, libertarian or anarchist or whatever. That is up to you. I don't claim any specific definition because all the definitions are jaded and they are interpreted differently by different people. So I come out and just summarize essentially what I stand for and what the show stands for. And that's why I add, when I say freedom, I say what I call true freedom, because there's too many people that use the word freedom incorrectly. If you're, in my opinion, it's incorrectly, or it's not real freedom. If you're somebody talking about freedom and liberty, but you think drugs should be illegal, you don't stand for freedom, because freedom, one of the things that freedom is based on is the freedom of your own body and to do what you want with your own body and to do whatever you want as long as you don't directly hurt somebody else. And yes, if you hurt yourself it could upset other people. That doesn't count. It's not their, they have no say in what you do. And although the government, by backing it with the threat of force, as well as a military, a police force, and a bunch of guns, yes, they claim the right to tell you what you can put in your body and to control you and all of these things. But they have no right neither. They have no authority. They just got a bunch of fucking weapons and people that are willing to use them on their behalf. They have a bunch of moron slaves, is essentially what they have. And if that offends anybody, I really don't give a fuck. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk all about schools, police in schools, kids, and how it all relates together. We did a show probably over a year ago talking about police in schools and parents and kids getting in trouble for ridiculous things. But we're going to kind of bring that together around the schools and put it together with the police, the arrest, the history of schools, what the whole purpose of schools are, along with CPS and other people trying to get involved, not just the schools, neighbors, and things like that. So we have a lot of things to talk about. I just finished watching some of the, I think it ended at 7, so I was just ending, but the town hall, which it kind of just makes me sick, but and just to be specific, it was a Republican town hall. I saw Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. I think either Kasich was there or he's supposed to be on tomorrow. I don't know why he's even in the race. He can't win, and it's all rigged any fucking way. And it's just, it kind of annoys the shit out of me, especially Donald Trump, who every time he opens his mouth, I want to smack him, because the arrogance that's one of it. If I had a, I guess, pet peeve or something like that, you know, people have pet peeves or whatnot. I do not like arrogant people at all. I can't stand them. And I know sometimes I probably come off arrogant, which is, I've said this before, with people I don't know, I can be very shy and standoffish. And there's 2 reasons for that. I mean, one is just I'm normally a shy person. And the other is that a lot of people you have to worry about, unfortunately. Now, I don't want to contradict myself, because the majority of people are good people and you don't have to worry about. But the majority of people that I have run into in my life, and it's probably, you know, the friends I had when I was younger, and maybe the way I look or I dress on the weekends or something like that, I might attract those people, and I don't look like a professional guy walking around in a suit or something. So even though I mean, job wise, I pretty much am. And, you know, during the week, a couple days, you know, we dress down, but I wear pants and a shirt, and it's not, you know, I guess I probably look more, I think even with that, I don't know, between my, you know, chin hair and my mustache and my dark sunglasses and looking young and whatever. So anyway, I just grew up that way, that I watch my back all the time. So I'm standoffish when it comes to certain people. Plus, I feel like I have a good sense for stuff like that. And I'm not talking about people that are going to kill you or even jump you, but somebody that might steal something from you, or things like that, or even fuck you over later, and just maybe fuck you over not in a criminal fashion, just you'll become friends, and then they'll fuck you over, like blow you off or something, or something to that effect. So for me, that might come off as, oh, well, I think I'm too good to hang out with somebody, or I think I'm better than somebody, or something like that. And it might come off as an arrogance, or, the shyness, the shyness and the standoffish, I think together might come off as arrogance. But I'm talking about people that are arrogant in the sense that they sit there and talk about how great they are, that Donald Trump, every fucking chance he gets, though, do people not notice this? I don't understand it, because it's not just, it's anything that comes up, he'll slip it in there. Every time he gets, every little chance he gets, he'll slip something in there, like, oh, my kids are great, or this is great, or my wife is great, and whatever is great. And everything has to do with him and some relation to him. My campaign manager is great, or this is. So that's what I'm talking about. And there's some radio hosts that are like that I can't stand. Not so much on the air, but off the air when they talk about themselves. And I mentioned we actually mentioned him because he didn't do a bad video, that Freedom Fucks, the Michael Dean there, that he had actually done. I mean, he knows his audio, and I'm not going to be somebody the same where I had an issue with Ian from Free Talk Live, and I said my issue with him, but I still said, hey, I support him in this, and this just came up with what was going on, or what is currently going on with him, where he had a bunch of equipment taken by the FBI, where I support him in that, and I always supported what he did and what he's doing for freedom. And I don't know him that well neither, so I just, my experience with him in LRN was not good, and the way he came off and whatever, and I could end up meeting him personally and end up thinking he's a great guy. I don't know, but I've heard from other people he's kind of an ass. Whatever. I don't know. But that was a minor thing. But the same with Michael Dean, who I know they're on a bunch of 10-watt radio stations, and they're so great and whatever. Of course, no matter how you want to look at it, I know they get way more listeners than me. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being serious. Whatever. I'm just a tiny little show. And I'm not being sarcastic at all. That's what it is. I do a tiny little show. I don't, I get a certain amount of listeners, and that's it. But I still like to do my show and try to put what I can out there and reach who I can, even if it's, only a few people. But he is really good when it comes to audio, and I watched his video. I didn't agree with him on everything, but he was definitely right about that Audio-Technica mic being, for the price and the quality. And the reason with him, and I actually talked about this off air to somebody, was he was just kind of an ass to me, just the way he came off. It was kind of like, and this is just through messaging, and I'm just like, okay. And then I was like, okay, let me listen to this guy's show. And they did a whole show where they just knocked somebody else. The whole show was about putting somebody else down. Oh, like, that's kind of fucked up. And then I heard some of his interviews. I'm like, well, I wonder, what this dude says in, his interviews, because he seems like I'm trying to give people, especially Liberty people, the benefit of the doubt. So I came across some stuff, and at work, of course, I'm always looking for stuff to listen to. So I checked out, and I haven't listened to that show in, over 6 months because I couldn't stand it anymore. But he was just so arrogant. Like, he's so great, and he's an expert in radio, and he's an expert in guns, even though he was anti-gun till like 5 years ago. Like, okay. So anyway, and I hate bringing people up and saying bad things about them, believe it or not. So, but I did compliment him. He is very good with sound and audio, setting up studios and stuff like that. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's good at it. So if he wants to brag about that and be arrogant about that, setting up home studios, hey, that's fine. He is good at it. But all this other shit, like, if he's such a great radio personality, and he's pretty old, I think he's like 50, he should be a lot further ahead than where he's at now. But whatever. I don't want to dwell on him, but anyway, I would actually, if you're looking in, and I mentioned this when we did the show about podcasting, if you are looking to start a podcast, I would watch his video. I can't believe I'm promoting his video, but it was pretty good. Like I said, I didn't agree with everything. I don't use the same mic for myself, but I did buy those mics for guests, and they sound good. They're exactly how he described them, and I bought a similar mixer. So I didn't go with everything that he had suggested, and I looked at some other stuff and did some other research. But I would definitely watch it. Just search Michael Dean or Freedom Fiends audio or podcasting something. So it makes me feel better, I guess, when I say something nice about somebody after I say something mean, because I honestly, when it comes to something like that, I mean, if somebody did something really bad to me, that's one thing. But, I mean, he was just kind of an ass to me, and he's arrogant in his interviews. But he's definitely not as arrogant as Donald Trump, not even close. He's up there, though. But Trump, man, just slips it in every fucking chance he gets. And I don't know how people can vote for him without getting sick. I mean, one, it's rigged anyway, and I think it could end up being Trump, and Trump made a deal with the powers that be, and that is going to be the next president who's going to be controlled. It could be. I tend to think it's Hillary, and they've already made the deal, and it is what it is. But who knows? So for me, it's more guessing, like, okay, who are the powers that be? And I when I say the powers that be, I don't know 100% obviously who they are. The billionaires, the corporations, the secret groups, whether it's the CFR, which is just accepted as Hillary was. I mentioned this a few times already. Hillary was there a couple of months ago. They're just accepted as like a government agency. They're not a government agency. That would be like me and a bunch of my friends putting together, or say the whole podcast, Liberty Podcasters all got together and started our own organization. The only difference is, of course, no one would fucking pay attention to us because we don't have any money. But if we were all billionaires, maybe they would, because that's all it is. It's people that own corporations. It's maybe celebrities that are up there, producers, the people that, I don't know if they even have a list. I know the president was on Bill Maher once, the president of the CFR, or whoever the head. Maybe they called him director. I don't know what the terminology for the head of the CFR is. And sorry for people who are checking every individual thing I say to make sure every little fact is exactly correct. But I don't. I would think he was the president, but when I saw him on Bill Maher, he might have been the director. I know his name was Richard. I can't remember his last name. It's irrelevant. What people don't seem to realize is that I work a full-time job that I would call a career, and I have a master's degree in business. I have a bachelor's in film. Not that I'm bragging. I got my MBA at University of Phoenix. I went to class. I would have got it at UNLV, but I was taking the fucking GMAT when I was going to school and working full time, and I got high enough if you took two different tests and put them together on the verbal and the math. But I just got to a point where I'm like, look, I'm not gonna fucking take it again. And really, I needed the money too, because with student loans, you can use part of the money to live as well, and I would have had to wait another, I think, whole semester, maybe even a year. It might have only started every September, and no, that's not true, because I was going to start in January. I would have had to wait till September, and I couldn't wait that long, and University of Phoenix didn't require the GMAT, so I said, fuck it, I'll just go there. At the time, it had a lot more respect than it does now. Like, somebody had mentioned it to me. I had never heard of it. And somebody at work who I think was going to UNLV, she was like, well, why don't you check out University of Phoenix? And, of course, they're all about money, and they get you in real quick. But I took summer classes at Emerson College in Boston, which is a pretty good school for communications. I mean, it's not I don't know what the best school for communications, UCLA or USC or even Stanford. Not that Stanford's known for communications, but Stanford's obviously a really good school. But it's like the next level down from I think a USC or a UCLA for communications. And I had to go to community college for 2 years even to get in. I couldn't get in right out of high school, because in high school, I did what I had to do to get by. Not that I wasn't smart and I couldn't do the stuff, but it was like, I'm not wasting my time with this bullshit and whatever. And I was more worried about fucking getting jumped by people and other things along those lines. So anyway, I went to Emerson and I took summer classes. Not the whole time. I just took 2 summer classes. One, they had 2 summer semesters. And basically, University of Phoenix is the equivalent of almost a summer class at any other school. So if you're going to class, I don't know what online is. But still, I would have rather to have a degree from UNLV than from University of Phoenix. So I look at it now, and maybe I should have waited and just retook it. It was just... I just got all nervous, taking the test. Plus, it's a computer aptive test. I don't know what it is now, because this was a while ago. This is years ago. But it's a computer aptive test, which means each question adapts to the question before as far as difficulty. And the more difficult, the more points you get. So, like, if your first question, say, is like mid-level, and then if you get that right, it gets harder. And then if you get that right, you get more points for the harder questions. If you get the first question wrong, it goes down. So I don't know how that affected me. Like I said, I should have really pushed, and I'm totally going off on another thing like I do, I guess, in my introductions in the topic. But this is a radio show, so I do like to talk about well, I really don't like to talk about myself, believe it or not, but I like to mix things up, and I want to have people also listen because they like listening for me, not just the topic. Or maybe they hate me and they want to listen because they hate me. Because I listen a lot of shows I listen to because I hate the fucking people. And some of them I get to the point where I can't listen no more, like Mark Levin. But anyway, yeah, it might have been better to to have had an MBA from UNLV. But right now in my career, I don't think it really makes a difference and is holding me back, or it might have maybe when I was younger, but I don't think now, if I continue in the same career path, that it's going to make a difference anyway. So that's my story of school, at least college, and my degrees. So, and I don't even know how I got onto that. I just remember talking about Trump and then suddenly getting onto schools. But anyway, people out there that can actually listen to this fucking guy for more than 5 minutes, I don't know. And it's the same stuff. That's what I'm noticing. I don't think people really have enough time to listen to a lot of the stuff that he's done, and I don't blame them. Like I said, when I'm at work, I have the type of job where, and I've said this like a million times, that, you know, I'm working on a computer, I'm creating reports, or especially recently where I'm doing more of just creating reports as opposed to working on projects where I'm talking a lot with other people. So while I'm doing that, you know, instead of music, hey, I'll listen to a town hall. You know, I don't absorb all of it, but I get the gist of it, and I hear Donald Trump brag about the same shit over and over again. And that's a big thing to me. I know that no matter what, people are going to say the same thing because they're trying to get their message across to a huge audience, and not everybody's listening all the time. But when you're putting in your arrogant little comments every fucking 2 seconds and the same ones every time, I think that's totally different. I remember Rudy Giuliani when he ran. He had a little arrogance there about, you know, what he did in New York City, but that's all he would talk about. It's funny because he was supposedly leading in the polls before they really started campaigning over anybody, like to be the next president. And then they started campaigning, and he really was like, fuck every other state. I'm just going to wait till Florida. And he just got destroyed. But I think the reason he did is because he didn't have anything else to fucking talk about. Plus, he's a fascist anyway. So, again, talking about this is kind of all for nothing except predicting who the powers that be have a deal with, because again, it's rigged, and your vote doesn't mean shit. And how could it even mean shit in a country of 300 million people anyway? The country is way too big. So I spent enough time on myself and Donald Trump and arrogant people. So I want to get to our topic for today, because it's kind of under one big umbrella, but it's a bunch of different subtopics under that umbrella. So I have a lot to talk about, and I was fortunate to be able to listen to interviews with John Taylor Gatto, who was a teacher for 30 years in New York, and is also, I would call him I guess I would call him somebody who believes in freedom, but he knows about the Federal Reserve and all of this stuff, and he's probably more of a limited government guy. I didn't get that far into it. It was more just about the school stuff, but even how school relates to the bigger picture. So we got the interview I listened to was getting into that as well. So a lot of information from John Taylor Gatto, anybody who follows what goes on in the schools and the real, I guess, how would I describe it? The reality of schools and the school system would probably know who John Taylor Gatto is. He's wrote a book. His book is actually online. I think it's on johntaylorgatto.com, and I definitely want to read that. So I think you can download it as a PDF, and you can also go there and buy it. So first, why I even thought about this again, because this is something we partially covered, the police in the schools and the parents getting arrested part before, but bringing it all together was a girl recently, a 12-year-old, got arrested for pinching a boy's butt. So they actually show a picture of the girl too. She has like pink hair. Let me find the article so I can see the pink hair. I have so many articles up. There it was, and it just disappeared. She's not that I look at 12-year-old girls and look if they're attractive, but she doesn't look like a girl who will be attractive in the future. Who knows? Maybe it's a bad picture of her. I mean, she's not disgusting looking. I'm just saying, because if I was a 12-year-old boy, first of all, I wouldn't give a fuck if a girl pinched my butt. I don't know how hard she pinched it, but this is in Florida. It seems like everything happens in Florida. I don't know what it is. And I probably shouldn't say this because it has to do with work, but the corporate office of the company I work for, because I'm not going to mention any companies, is in Florida. And that's where, if I wanted to change jobs essentially, or really move up, I would probably have to move to Florida, and that's not going to happen. But not because of stuff like this, just because at least where Nevada's at right now, it still has some level of freedom. Florida's, in some ways, like they don't have state income tax. They're one of the other states. I think there's eight of them. So there's some levels of freedom in Florida, but there's I don't know. There's all this crazy shit that always comes out of Florida. Maybe it's because all the people moving there from other places, or I don't know. But a 12-year-old girl, she pinched a male classmate's butt during school hours. So this is the whole thing where years ago, things that happened during school hours, unless it was, if you stab somebody or going beyond a fight, if you assaulted somebody and it went beyond just, a regular fight, or I think drugs, depending on what it is, they may involve the police, although I think that's something that they shouldn't. I don't know what they would have done with marijuana when I was in school, but if they would have called the police or just confiscated, it might have had to do with the amount. I actually sold it in high school, so I always had it on me, but I was very careful. I never left it in my fucking locker, that's for sure. Anyway, because one of my friends got his locker searched, and that's why somebody fucking, I guess, snitched on him or something, or I don't know. Anyway, and that was pretty fucked up, but that wasn't by the police. It was just by the school. But usually years ago, school issues were handled like this were handled in school. Things that weren't considered a big deal, like something like this. So she pinched his butt. And I know if it was a girl, they treat it differently. But at the same time, I don't think the police would be called if a boy pinched a 12-year-old girl's butt, neither. Not at 12. So what happened was she ended up getting arrested for misdemeanor battery and was placed in juvenile detention, ended up pleading guilty, and I believe she got 2 years probation. She has to take drug tests, which is ridiculous because this is a case that has nothing to do with drugs. She's a fucking 12-year-old girl who pinched the kid's butt. And from what I understand, it was the mother that was the one who pressed charges, that the kid. And now, basically what the mother did was make that kid a social pariah at the school now, because kids are going to be like, you know, your mother pressed charges on some for a girl pinching your butt. You should be fucking happy some girls touching your butt. I mean, fuck. And it's insane. And this is not the exception. This is the rule. First of all, you have police in schools now. Most schools have police in them, which it's like being in a prison. You know, I don't know what I'd do, to be honest. I mean, we had police come to the school and I freaked out over that, but they weren't there permanently. They came by a couple times when I was, and that was, I think, senior year. And I was almost out of there anyway, but that was it. But if there were actually police at the school, I don't know what I would do. I would, I wasn't aware of homeschool back then, or it's not something I consciously thought of, because I always thought of school as a way to meet girls, although I never dated any girls that I was in the same school with. They were always in different schools, but which is probably a better idea. But to have police in schools, I mean, that's intimidating enough. And now it's like you have people getting arrested for ridiculous things. So I have a whole bunch of stuff from the past year that I want to bring up relating to kids at schools, and also neighbors calling the police as well on kids. So it's really the attack. I called it the attack on parenting, and I shouldn't have. Although parents have to be very careful, or they're going to be held liable. I have stories where parents were arrested for what their kids did as well. But it's really, you can't be a fucking kid anymore. You can't. You have to be so careful about what you do. There was a story of a 6-year-old being handcuffed, I think, to a desk because, he's having like a temper tantrum or whatnot. And he's a 6-year-old. I think there was another story. I think the youngest that I've heard, and again, as I was saying earlier, and I didn't really finish this because I went on to something else, is the amount of fucking stories I read. And I was reading a lot of books for a while there too, and I need to get back to that. I'm taking them out. I just keep renewing them. I haven't read them yet because with the show it's kind of hard. But now that I'm doing an hour less, maybe I can try to get some reading in before I go to bed. But it's since I cut the show from 7 to 9 instead of 7 to 10, I can really tell a difference because I get to bed and end up getting enough sleep, and there's a huge difference. So if anything, I would start at 6 as opposed to going till 10. But I like doing the 3-hour shows. I do. I know for people it might be too much and they get bored and whatever, but then listen to the parts you want to listen to and don't listen to what you don't want to listen to. I don't know what to tell you. They have created a medium that allows people like me that can just go on the internet and pay a little money and do a show. Well, I wouldn't say pay a little money for the equipment, but I don't need all the equipment I have to do a show, and I didn't start with all the equipment. But there's so many stories that I come across and read, and so I'm not going to remember every story's exact detail. So if I get it wrong, I apologize. But actually, I don't. But my point is to be as accurate as possible, but at the same time, I'm not going to remember every little detail of every story, especially when unfortunately, I don't have the ability to do this full time. If I did, I think the shows would be 50 times better because all I do all day is prepare and read articles and reread articles and do, I don't script anything. I do outlines though, because I think radio has to be spontaneous, but at the same time, you need to know if you're talking about a topic, you need to know what you're going to talk about. And I think I talked about this in the podcast show we did, but I definitely think you need to do an outline if you're talking about a topic, and that's what I put together now. It's just I have to throw it together a lot faster than if I did this full time. I could take so much more time and research and all of that. So if anybody wants to fund my show and pay me what I make now, that's fine. You can actually donate at on the website. I don't think anyone's donated, and I don't blame you if you don't donate. I'm not one of those people who yell at people and say you have to donate because I put all this time into this and whatever. It's great if you do, but if you don't, that's fine too. Anyway, there were stories where you're talking kids 4 and 6, but I do have some specific stories that I did pull from prior stories, not from prior stories, but prior stories that I've talked about as well. There were a few of these. There were parents that were arrested because they let their kid play outside. So this is from USA Today in April 2015. This happened twice. I guess a Maryland couple, they got in trouble, quote unquote. They had a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they let them walk to the park, I believe, and cops found them unattended. I don't know if the police just came upon them or somebody called. That's the other thing too, is you have watchers, really. And I talked about a note I got about my animals, which they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about, but threatening to call the ASPCA really for no reason, because my animals were outside. Yeah, so they're outside. They had food and water. They're in an enclosed area, but they're not, they have enough room. If I want to put my animals outside, I can put my animals outside. Go fuck yourself. So they wrote an anonymous note, of course, and threatened to call the HOA, which they can't do shit anyway, and the ASPCA. in this case, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, the officers found them unattended. And I guess their protocol in Montgomery County, Maryland, is to pick the kids up. They were 2 blocks from home. They told the kids they would drop them off at home. Instead, they had to sit in a patrol car for 2 hours, and then they were taken to Child Protective Services 10 miles away. And, of course, then CPS gets involved. The family, the parents, were not contacted until after 8 o'clock. I guess they didn't see their kids for hours, so they're probably worried about their kids, of course. And I guess Maryland law prohibits children younger than 8 from being unattended in a dwelling or car, but makes no reference to outdoors. Well, one of the kids was 10, so I don't know why they took him then. And plus, he was watching his sister. I believe it was a boy and a girl. And so these are the type of things that are going on. And that's not the only one. There was one at a park where a woman worked at McDonald's. The kid would just sit at McDonald's after school and wait for her mom to finish working. But there was a park next door, so she let her daughter play at the park. Of course, some fucking fuckhead who can't mind their own business, who's watching everything kids do and everything you do. And who knows, there's no doubt, and I talked about the stupid Stasi last week, but that there's not people that are working for maybe DHS, or I don't know who they'd actually be working for when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, it could just be partially morons that are brainwashed by the see something, say something, and they take it, no matter what. If they see kids, if they see whatever, they're going to call the police instead of minding their own fucking business, because they're making a decision saying that, okay, I believe that it's not okay for a 9-year-old to be at a park during the day by themselves. And who the fuck are they? And of course, it depends on the kid as well. But it's none of their fucking business. Seriously, it's not. And I know about how they do studies, and or there's been video of like somebody bleeding to death and people are just like walking over the body. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about minding your own business. That's to helping somebody that is in need of help, or if somebody's being attacked, like literally beaten or something, and you go and help them. I'm not talking about shit like that. That's totally different. But you have people that are literally watching you. Like I have my neighbors, they're literally watching the house. And I know from that letter about the animals, even though they had things wrong, like that there was no food, they have to be watching very closely to know that much. And what the fuck? One, how do they have that much time? What are they doing all day? Or are there people that are in neighborhoods that work for the government? And if there's not now, I believe there will be at some point. So you have a lot of these stories, especially in the past year or so. And it could have been going on longer and we just didn't hear about it. But that either the kids are going to CPS. These parents were accused of child neglect, the ones I just talked about with the 6 and 10-year-old. In the case of the mother that worked at McDonald's from what I recall, she was arrested and the kid was taken to CPS because, of course, they'll be better off. Not to mention, CPS is like a mini mafia. The fact that they totally violate the Constitution or due process in every aspect. And I would just not open my fucking door. I know then they'll get the police to come down, which is ridiculous. And, I don't know what I'd do in that situation. I don't have kids, but I worry about shit like that. I mean, we have neighbors calling about animals. Never mind, your kids. What, you gotta hide your kids, like not let them go outside and not let them play and treat them like they're little babies, because if you don't, somebody might call the police. I mean, I remember going out riding bikes at 7 or 8 whenever I learned how to ride a bike. 6, 7, 8, something like that, where we go around the neighborhood and ride bikes. It was no big deal. We'd go outside and play. So what is happening in society that these things are now not okay? So it's all part of a bigger picture. One, I mean, of course, you have the police state now where the government wants to control everything. So you have government controlling parenting, first of all. Here's another one. Parents charged with neglect after an 11-year-old plays in yard for 90 minutes from 2015. Felony. Of course, this is Florida, too. And this was after their son was reportedly playing alone in the backyard for an hour and a half. They were hit with felony charges. 11 in the backyard. Now, I don't know what the outcome was because it doesn't say. But the fact that they were even charged with felony child neglect is insane. And what happens is you have these laws that are so open-ended that what is child neglect? It's open to interpretation. So it's really up to what the judge feels like. Well, first the police, and of course they're a bunch of fucking idiots. And then the judges, which are on the side of the government. And once you get arrested, the judge wants a conviction because that's how they are. And then you have parents having their kids taken away because they let their kid go outside and play. And I mean, that's part of the reason. The reason that laws are written the way they are is not by accident, and put it that way, because they can use them any way they want. They can interpret them any way they want. That's why they write them that way. I mean, they've been doing that since the beginning. Because as we all know, you could write laws very specific and without the legalese bullshit, but they don't want to do that because when you have these definitions, they can interpret it any way they want. So if they want to find you guilty of something, it gives them leeway. Now, there's some times where, yeah, there's no way that they can actually, I mean, they can do whatever they want, really. But if they followed the law, they can't find you guilty, but they still find you guilty. And I've, been through some experience, a lot of experiences, I guess, with police, unfortunately, and even with courts. So I know pretty well how courts work. And then I know a lot of people who've been through the system as well, unfortunately. And one, they'll do whatever they want. It doesn't matter what the law says. It doesn't. And the police, whatever they say is what goes. And unless you have it on video, and even then, it might not make a difference. The police are like gods as far as their word against yours. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how respected you are in the community. It doesn't matter. Their word means everything compared to yours. And they're all on the same team. And that's why when I talked about this whole separation of powers, there is no separation of powers. They're all government. They all work together. They all work for each other. Even the defense attorney knows that he can only go so far because he works with these people all the time. That's why if you even want a fucking attorney, and if it's anything that's a misdemeanor, I would never hire an attorney again unless I'm charged with a really serious felony. And I would make sure I hired one from like fucking Reno and not from Las Vegas that knows all the judges, all the prosecuting attorneys, and has relationships with them because they make deals. Oh, well, I'll give you this for this. You know, this person will let go if this person, you get them to plead guilty. You know, they play these fucking games back and forth. But so what has happened, I guess, on so we have two things here. And it all has to do with kids. It's kids inside of school and outside of school. Inside of school, they're now being watched by police. Most schools have police in them, what kind of learning environment is that? That's why, again, I'd advise everyone to take your fucking kids out of school immediately. Watch some John Taylor Gatto videos, read his book, and, you know, maybe that will convince you. We'll get into his stuff and that part of the show a little later. But you also had, speaking of other stories that had to do with the school itself, an 18-year-old EMT who had a knife in his car, in his packet. So he had like an EMT, I don't know what they have. I guess they have an EMT bag or whatever it is, purse. That wasn't an insult to EMTs. I'm just saying whatever it's called, I have no idea. He had it in his car. Somebody snitched on him, which people love doing, getting other people in trouble. And based on that, which anybody could say anything, they searched his car. He was charged with a felony. I think he ended up in jail for a couple weeks, and I don't remember, or not that I don't remember, I never got the end result on that one, the final ruling. I know he got out of jail and he was suspended from school, and then I don't know what had happened after that. I never followed up on the ruling in that case. You have the girl in Spring Valley, South Carolina. This was pretty recent, maybe 6 months ago. And most people saw the video where the girl was like flipped over. She wouldn't leave the classroom and they wanted her cell phone, I believe. And the cop comes in and like flips her over. This is a girl, mind you, and not a big girl neither, a little skinny girl. Cop like puts her in a chokehold and like flips her over the desk. It's ridiculous. You have a kid who was tasered because he was trying to break up a fight between two girls. I mean, I could go on and on about all these stories, but this is all from having police in the schools. How can you feel safe in any fashion from having police in the schools? This is a similar thing to, at least to me, that I'm more worried about the police and the government coming and taking away my rights and abusing me than a group like ISIS, who the chances of them doing anything are slim to none. Especially when, you know, I have a means to defend myself as well. So I'm more worried about people that I can't defend myself against, or if I tried to defend myself against, I would be killed or go to jail. At least with ISIS, I can legally defend myself against them, and I got a pretty good shot of being surviving. A lot of this is bullshit, and not a lot of it. I mean, it's all bullshit, and yes, there are terrorists, but the fear that they're trying to drum up is insane. That just to, again, take away more and more freedoms. And now you got things like this going on. Now, these things weren't going on, I don't think they were going on 10 years ago. Maybe they were. I don't know how long the kids are being arrested. Kids have been essentially kidnapped by police, and parents are being kidnapped by police for letting their kids go outside and play. I know all I can say is it wasn't like that when I was a kid. And I haven't heard any stories until recently. Now, that doesn't mean anything, because more independent media is popping up, and it's not something that I think government media covers. There's probably so many more stories than we know about, and I could mention a whole bunch more, but I don't want to get into, just listing stories. Essentially, I just wanted to list enough so that people understand that this is not something that happens once in a while, or it's with the one girl for pinching the kid's butt. It's an isolated incident. You had another kid arrested for he was either expelled or I don't know if he was actually arrested. He was taken out by the police, though, for making a gun sign. I have the article of a 10-year-old. Actually, it's the picture. You know what it was? It's the actual picture on the event of the kid taken out by police and handcuffed for farting in class. Now, I don't know if that led to actual charges that stuck. Juvenile records are sealed, but don't think that they don't come up later, because they do. They're not sealed to judges. I found that out later when they're looking at my juvenile record. They are quote unquote sealed from employers, and background checks and things like that, but they are not sealed from judges. Just so people know, because they probably thought, oh yeah, it's sealed, nobody will ever see it. No, that is not the case. That record will always exist. Now, I always look at it's the government's record on me. It's not my record, because they make shit up and write whatever they want and find you guilty of things, whether you did them or not, or force you to plead out to things, whether you did them or not, because as I had mentioned on Thursday, and Thomas never called in, but his wife pleading guilty to get out of jail, because it's like blackmail. Hey, you just plead guilty, you'll get out of jail, we'll just give you probation. Then they get their conviction. So you have the schools part of it, and the police in the schools. And the kids, the police definitely abusing their power, and kids getting arrested for all types of ridiculous things, and police getting involved in all types of ridiculous things. If they wanted to have security, and I'm not a big fan of security guards, because most security guards are wannabe cops and they have that attitude. But if they had security guards that were there not to arrest kids, not to intimidate kids, but to just make sure nobody got hurt. If there was a fight, they'd break it up. If there was something where somebody was in danger or something like that, the cops aren't there just for the sole purpose of protecting kids. They're there to arrest kids, to get involved in kids' lives, to know more about all these kids. So then they know, oh, these are the troublemakers. We can keep track of them. We know what they do outside of school, or we can be looking for them outside of school as well. And they get all this information. I mean, it's not what the average person would think it was, that thinks government is great and there to protect people. That, oh, well, the police are just there to protect the kids. No, that's not why. Because again, you could have security guards there that don't have the power to arrest people and are less intimidating. And you could have a school system or a school board or superintendent that made sure that the security guards were there with one purpose, and that's to protect people, and that's it. So you have things that have gotten to a point that really should have never got to. And they can use things like, oh, all the school shootings, which, of course, they inflate. The crime has gone down. Shootings have gone down. And just like terrorism, your chance of being in a school shooting is you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning. So the schools, which, well, public schools at least, which are part of the government, or of course using more and more tactics to control kids, to introduce them to the police state, to get more information on them, to have police watching them and police knowing who they are, along with all the things that were installed with Common Core, like all the databases and all the information that they collect. And parents are a big part of the problem as well, even though some parents that are, standing up or letting their kids go out and play are end up getting arrested or charged with child neglect. And there are parents, and depending on the state, that are getting arrested for what their kids do if their kids commit a crime and they're a certain age, which is insane to me as well. But when it comes to this obedience, essentially what the parents are doing is, one, school is nothing but government babysitting. That's what it is. It's the government babysitting and babysitting your kids, and people like me paying for it that don't have kids. And if you want to have kids, or if you choose to have kids, you should be responsible for them. I don't believe in public schools, period. I don't think it's the collective. Somebody had mentioned a collective in a video, or the community that is responsible for educating individual kids. It's the parents. And what parents do at the same time is they're worse or as bad as the schools, because they believe they own their kids as well. They teach the kids just to blindly obey. And then when they're 18, they don't question anything. Between their parents and the school, they're totally brainwashed and indoctrinated, and they're just obedient. The majority, of course, you have people that end up, rebelling against a lot of this stuff. But even a lot of people that rebel as kids, then when they grow up, they totally change. And then they go along with the same thing, and they bring their kids up the same way, which is unfortunate. So, I mean, to me, the solution is just stop fucking relying on other people to educate your kids. Stop relying on other people to fucking pay for your kids' education, and to homeschool your kid, or get a homeschool group together, or get something outside of government. And when we get into John Taylor Gatto, it's going to make a lot more sense as well. So I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the history of schools. And I think most people know about the Prussian model, but also John Taylor Gatto's experience with schools and a lot of his opinions, as well as facts that he had researhed as well. If you'd like to call in, you can call in at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. You can also Skype into the show at Nonpartisan Liberty for All. It's all one word. And send a contact request, your name and what you want to talk about, and we will get you on. And if you like to call in, it's probably best just to text the same information, your name and what you want to talk about. And maybe you have a kid and maybe you have some experience with the schools personally and want to talk about it, or maybe you've had a bad experience with schools or with the police interfering in your parenting. Are you supposed to call the police before you let your kid outside and ask them if it's okay? And I'm not kidding. Should you, every time you leave your kid alone or your kid asks to go out and play, should you be calling the police? Maybe you should. That's what they're making it out to be. And really, it's all about government control. All of this leads back to government control, government controlling every aspect of your life. End game. I know different people have different opinions, but my opinion is government controlling every aspect of your life. 1984, like the movie, for people who aren't familiar, the book, it was originally a book, obviously made into a movie. That's the end game of it all, in my opinion. And it's getting there in certain places. It depends where you're at. Definitely when you have kids, it's even a risk now, because now that's additional information the government knows about you. So they have something else they can go after you for, especially if your kids are going to government schools. They can get more involved in your life. So it's crazy. It really is. And as I said, some places are worse than others, but pretty much all around the country, there's some level of this going on. Now, to what extent they take it to, it depends. And I'm sure in bigger cities, it's harder for them to, keep tabs on stuff like this when they're dealing with other more serious crimes. However, if you look at a city like Las Vegas, and I've talked about this before, and I looked at their more recent stats, it's still the same thing. 75% or 70, I think it dropped a little to like 72%, but it's between 70 and 75% of their arrests are for things or crimes that are not on the FBI uniform crime statistics, which is like murder, rape, robbery, all violent crimes, all crimes with victims. Those are 25% of the arrests. 25% are for those serious crimes. The 75% are not on the FBI uniform crime statistics. So it's anything else, any little misdemeanor, all these ridiculous crimes. So obviously they don't focus on the serious stuff anyway, because then their arrest records would look bad. And really, in this day and age, all they care about is statistics. Oh, crime went down, or this went down, or it's not about what's best for the community or people or whatever. And not that they know what's best anyway. That's for people individually to decide what's best for them. However, the government doesn't agree with that. So nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. Check us out on the website, and we'll be right back after this.
If your kids are not in class, you could be the one who winds up in handcuffs. Good evening, I'm Mark Allen.
And good evening, I'm Katie Houston. Dayton Police and the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office teamed up with the Dayton Public School District to arrest parents whose kids have not been showing up to class. The parents not too happy, as you can imagine. Holly Samuels has reaction in our top story at 5:30.
Inside the juvenile detention center in downtown Dayton, Dayton police officers, Montgomery County Sheriff's deputies, truancy officers, and children's service workers team up for an unusual mission.
You know, you're not going out after hard criminals, but you're going out after parents who, just don't understand how important it is to get these children to school.
They study their targets, 19 parents whose kids, kindergarten through 4th grade, haven't shown up for class. The team started in the morning to catch them at home, and they immediately meet their mark.
Our job is to get parents and children on board.
You see some up in the window.
But just a few houses down their list,
Come to the door. Come on.
they find a mother reluctant to come out, and they soon learn why. When the door finally opens, officers find 2 young children who should be in school.
Ma'am, how come your kids weren't in school today?
This woman and all the others will be held in jail overnight, and they'll appear before a judge in the morning.
In order to be able to succeed, they need an education, and so it hurts you as a human being to know that they're not getting that education and that right to succeed in life.
In Dayton, Holly Samuels, 2 News.
Come on, we're gonna go around.
I just want to say before we get to the next clip, and sorry about that beginning. Basically, I had a YouTube video that was all written words, so there was no spoken word, so that's why it was just some stupid music. But education in school is not the same thing. Just because you go to school does not mean you're getting educated and vice versa. You don't have to get education from being in a government school. So let's make that clear. Of course, that's where they want you because they want more money. The more kids they have, the more money they get. And they just throw money. Hey, test scores are low. We just give us money. They throw money at everything when money's not really the problem. And the mission of the schools is not even to educate anyway. And we'll get into that a little later. So we'll get back to the next clip and be right back after this.
Somebody, in cleaning up after the football game last Friday, did somebody bring in a backpack? Not that I know of. I can just go down there and check in the custodial room and see if they left it in there. Copy. If you find it, just send it to my office.
Joe first.
Control 286.
Nothing on it,
Arriving about 10 seconds.
Really good. You can be on the lookout for a PM, white car,
I haven't done anything.
in the alleyway.
What are you running for then? That's the thing.
It's a common conscious to run when you see someone coming at you. Say stop. That's just a common conscious, sir.
Would the common conscience say when somebody says stop, wouldn't that be good to just stop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what the hell?
Sit.
We haven't done anything.
Sit. That's not on you.
Well, there's nothing on me. I'm just checking.
Doesn't mean you want to smoke it. Sit down.
Sir, can we go now?
In a second.
We haven't done nothing.
Let them just get our information.
All the people that I've arrested, you know how many told me they actually did something? Not that you're under arrest,
Control 286.
You can check our backpacks too.
What?
You can check our backpacks if you want.
I'm not going to carry your backpack.
I said check it.
I'm going to check it, but I'm not going to carry it.
Should we go now? We're going to be late to school. We haven't committed no crime.
That's a copy. You can change that call to like 426. Price. The victim is stating it happened somewhere in the area Easton and Bruce. She has a description of a male, black, shaved head, white shirt, blue jeans, pink eye, yes, a pink eye.
Pink eye.
And one eye.
Did I say to stand? Did I say to stand?
Why are you so? Be advised to leave on foot.
You're gonna know that when you guys are finding me.
Whose book bag am I looking in?
Mine.
Yours?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to know who you are. All right.
Charlie 286, you can be on the lookout of a BM,
That's mine.
shaved head, white shirt, jeans.
What?
Mine's next.
Yours is next? Why is that?
Because then you already searched the red one?
Control, Victor 503.
Victor 503.
I'll be out to the Easton and Bruce to 436.
Where can we go?
Victor 503.
I can't offer to be late for school.
Why? You want I can do all kinds of things.
Says who? We're not on school campus.
What?
And we're on private property.
So
you have
what?
no right to search
So
us.
what?
You have no right to search us.
I got a report that you're smoking dope.
Okay, well, we don't have to.
When you graduate law school, you can tell me what
I don't have to graduate law school to know my
right
right.
to search us. We haven't committed a crime. You haven't found anything on us.
Yo, I got you on videotape.
Good.
Yeah.
Get him. What's his name?
Put it on Channel 8.
Yeah.
Don't forget to mention that the radio dispatcher told me that you were smoking dope.
All right. Well, you haven't
Who?
found anything on us.
Us?
Well, I don't know if I found
I don't know if it was us. Couldn't be.
What is that for?
It's my drink when I go running.
What is it? Like a protein stuff or something?
Like a what?
A protein drink or something?
Yeah, when you run, it gives you energy like C4.
You're on a track team?
What?
You're on a track team?
No, I run a lot though.
What's your name?
Mine?
Yeah.
Daniel. Let's go now, sir. What time is it out?
I'll give you a pass. You're going to be late. What's your last name?
You get that nice comment from that fucker. Oh, when you're a lawyer, you can tell me what the law is or whatever. And props to that kid. Came back and said, I ain't gonna be a lawyer to know my rights. You know, I hope that kids start rising up and rebelling against this shit. And rebelling in the name of freedom, not this communist fucking Bernie Sanders bullshit. But rebel against what they're putting kids through today. And trust me, what's going on in this video is no different than, you know, shit that went on when I was a kid. But the whole police state has increased. And to me, and this is what I say about everything, it's, you know, you start at the bottom of the stairs and climb one step at a time. And they're just, as time goes by, they're going to take more and more control and more power. And they're growing up at a time where now they got the tanks, they got the automatic weapons, they're in schools, they're basically, you know, being watched 24/7. It's crazy, you know, between their parents and between the schools and the police in the schools. And I don't know if these schools got cameras on them or what, and they didn't have a right. Just because somebody calls and says, oh, there were some kids smoking dope, I guess they can say that's probable cause. But this bullshit of, so somebody called and said something. I could call and say whatever I want, and so could anybody else. That's not probable cause just because somebody says something. Now, they're going to use it that way, and a judge will defend them that way as well. But it's a bunch of fucking bullshit. And this is actually in Clark County, Nevada. So this is here that this happened.
Huh?
False.
False?
False.
The false TER.
What?
Five to 15.
11 to 7.
People over here do not want you guys hanging out in here. You don't live here. They don't want you to see. They don't want to see you in here.
Sir, I understand that, but I think they should come out and say something before calling cops.
Why do you think they should have to do that?
Because why would you call cops first?
Well, if you saw somebody hanging in your yard...
If they're abandoning my house,
No.
then
If they were in your yard, what would your parents do? Would they go out and say, excuse me, would you please leave?
Well, I mean,
Hey.
What's your name?
David.
Promoting the ideas of true freedom and liberty, nonpartisan liberty for all radio with Dave Bourne.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All, nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and you can get all that information at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. Easy to remember. If you'd like to call in, 702-470-7664. I forgot my number for a minute, 702-470-7664. I'm going to see who posted that. Maybe I can get in touch with those kids, see if they would come on, because I'm sure they probably have some more stories. And maybe I can talk to them about what goes on in their school. I don't know how long ago that video was, so I've had it for a while. But I did call I mentioned this before, I called the Clark County School District before and asked them about their lockdown procedures. This was another thing I wanted to bring up as well. Of course, we don't have a lot of time left. That's the whole thing, man. You don't realize how fast time goes by. Maybe if you're a listener, you're like, damn, this is going by slow. This shit is fucking boring. But if you're on the air, you don't realize, like, I could go on for a long time. And I know that might bore some people or totally have them disinterested. I think part of it, though, is that, because I had this with one show that people were interested in the topic, that I didn't get to it right away because it's a radio show and I'm not going to just talk about one topic for 3 hours usually, unless there's a whole bunch of different aspects to it. Like, this is something that it's one topic, but not really. It's a bunch of topics kind of combined under one umbrella. But it was the making of a murderer, and somebody was upset because I didn't get to it in the first 7 or 8 minutes. And I apologized to them. I told them I can find out exactly when it comes on if they want, when I start talking about it. Because I did talk about it for a good hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, the majority of the show. But I have to mix it up where I'm trying different things. I'm trying to be as entertaining as possible, because at the same time, if I'm boring, no one's going to give a fuck about what my message is. So the main point is to get the message out, but at the same time, it's got to be entertaining. It's got to be something that people want to listen to, and maybe it's not, and that's fine. And maybe for some people it is. But the point being is that it takes up a lot of time to get these things out. And for me, I don't have a problem most of the time. Thursday's show was it was hard to get through the whole show, and I only did 2 hours just because it was really, I didn't have enough, I think, on the topic. It was really just comparing West Germany the former East Germany to the U.S., and it could have been a much better show. I didn't have enough time to prepare and whatnot. But once I get going, I mean, I can sit there and go 3 hours easily and bring up all this different stuff. I mean, I have a lot of life experience, even though I'm not that old, but I mean, I've had a lot of things that have happened. I've done a lot of research on different things and read a lot of articles and books. And of course, I have a master's degree, and there's plenty of things that I can get into that relate to freedom. It's not hard. Of course, I don't want to every show say the same thing. And I think I did really good for, I don't think I did any similar show for almost like a year and a half. And recently we've been kind of talking about things that we've talked about in the past, but not doing the exact same show, adding different things to it, like this show where, we talked about police and kids getting arrested, but we didn't talk about it all together and under the umbrella of the history, which I'm going to talk about now. But it does go by fast when you're doing it, usually. Like I said, sometimes, like Thursday didn't go by too fast. If things are, it depends, man. You can be in a mood where you're just like, I want to get through this or whatever. No matter what, I try to stay positive, even if, before I get on the air, I'm in a bad mood, or, after I am. Because I think for me, the type of show that I do, it's not a yelling at people or getting in arguments or that type of show. It's a upbeat type of show. And it's definitely better when you have co-hosts. And unfortunately, based on schedules and other things going on, it's hard to... nobody left on bad terms, at least my co-hosts that were on the show. I'm not talking about other shows that may have been on the network, but it was just, I had people on the East Coast. I had people that have personal family issues, police issues. So, unfortunately, a lot of it's hard to replace people when they leave, and even to get them in the first place. And for a while, it was really good when I had, somebody every day of the week, and it was great. And the shows, I think, were a lot better. Just listening to me for 2 hours, I can understand how that can be boring to some people if the content and my, mixing stuff up and my inflection and so many different things that can cause somebody to not want to listen. So regardless, I just do the best I can. And as I've always said, this is my form of activism. So John Taylor Gatto has done a lot of interviews. I wonder if I could possibly get him on the show. But he was a teacher for 30 years. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I get to that, I was mentioning that I called the school about lockdown. So in Nevada, and I can't speak to other places, but I'm sure it's the same way, they lock down elementary schools, it seems like, once a week. If you look in the paper, you'll read about school lockdowns now. And it will be over ridiculous stuff. Like the couple that I remember was one guy barricaded himself in his house because he got evicted or something. And it was a couple miles away from the schools. The police were outside with a SWAT team, and they shut down like 3 elementary schools. Another was a guy who I believe stole a car and then like escaped or something, and they were chasing him, something like that. They shut down, they do these lockdowns for, which I've never heard of until recently. I never heard of a lockdown when I was in school. And they'll do it now for any little thing that happens. And they won't let you leave. I mean, I think about if I was in high school the way I was, if they tried to, even if there was a shooting, and I'm talking about a shooting of one person shot another person, it was about them, and they fail to, of course, talk about that. Most of the time, they won't always want to make it like, oh, it's some random shooter who wants to kill everybody. Not a kid came to school, got in a fight with this other kid before, and, he's bigger than him, so he brought a gun. I'm not saying that's okay, but my point is that that's not really a threat to everybody else. That would be like saying, okay, there was a fight at school, everybody is in danger of being punched in the face. But I wouldn't fucking stay there. Or if I was at a mall and there was something and some type of lockdown, fuck that. I'm not, staying there. I guess they'd probably pull a gun on me and threaten to shoot and kill me if I didn't. But go for it. Are you going to kill me because I'm not going to stay there? Because I have a right to free movement, which, the government doesn't care about or respect. Remember that your rights don't come from the fucking government. They want to teach you that in school too. Your rights come from, whether if you're religious, you can say God, or just being a human and being born and being a person, you have these rights. Not positive rights like right to health care, negative rights like the right to freedom of speech or the right to travel or the right to put whatever you want in your body. And most Republicans still don't get that. They talk about all this freedom and government stay out of it. Oh, unless it's drugs or unless it's this. It's such bullshit. Anyway, they do these lockdowns all the time as well. It's totally just preparing kids for a police state and that it's needed. And don't forget that, of course, these are the people that in the future will be, quote unquote, running the country, if a country still exists at that point, which hopefully it doesn't. But they'll be the ones that are making these policies or voting, or that's how you change a country or a population, or you go after the kids if you want to do it, over time. And that's what they've been doing. That's what America has been from the beginning. It's a over time type of thing. And maybe the founding fathers, quote unquote, didn't think that. Maybe. Who even knows? Maybe some of them did. But, didn't think that it's basically that's what government is and that's what it's going to lead to. A lot of them, I think, thought that that is what it's going to lead to, but they didn't necessarily want it to lead to that, but they thought that it probably would. So, sorry, getting back to John Taylor Gatto. So he was a teacher for 30 years in New York. And he gets even into deeper stuff that really the whole school system, one, it's going to weed out anybody who, you know, the people that actually want to teach kids and educate them and not just indoctrinate them and put them through this system of obedience, that they weed all them out. And what you end up with is, you know, the obedient teachers and administrators that administrate all of this shit. It goes back to Prussia and Horace Mann. In 1846, it became mandatory in Massachusetts for... Wait, I'm sorry. And let me take a step back. So before it got to Massachusetts, so it started in the state of Prussia, which was part of Germany, and they were known for their army. But what they did was they made school mandatory 1819, and what the result was, the reasons were, one, they wanted a better, stronger military. They wanted an obedient military that didn't think for themselves. They wanted them to be obedient. At the same time, they didn't want, I guess they had a king. They didn't want they didn't want people disagreeing with the king or challenging the king. So they developed this school system, putting ages together as they did. And what came out of it, and basically what they did was teach people to keep them in their place and removing the capacity for intellectual and moral development and to destroy imagination. And these are things according to John Taylor Gatto, at least the destroying imagination and to keep them in their place. And but if you read anything about Prussia, it's basically the same thing, to indoctrinate them so they'll agree with the king and to build a stronger military. And I guess they did initially. Now, obviously, I don't think that could be maintained, because what happens when all the leaders die off and then you just have a bunch of followers? But that was the whole point. And it goes down to everything. I mean, how the classroom setting and like having, like I said, people with the same age groups, because that doesn't really make any sense. You would think that the people at the same level should be together, not the same age groups. So all of these things that we see in schools now, for the most part, of course, they've gone beyond that, and now it's a total police state within schools, but was the basis of the state of Prussia. So because I guess their economy started doing good and they had a stronger military, everybody was looking at Prussia and wanted to see what are they doing. So Horace Mann of Massachusetts, which according to Gatto really was like a front man, like he made a deal for political power. He was nobody. They said, hey, you're going to be the person who goes and does this. He had nothing to do with the idea. He had nothing to do with the plan. He was just the front man. Like Kevin Pollak in Casino, I guess. Now, that was according to Gatto. What happened to Horace Mann later, he was supposed to become a congressman, and from what I understand, And I thought at first he said he became one, but no, he ended up not the dean, but the head of some small liberal arts college somewhere. They kind of like exiled him off as the president of liberal arts college. And I think it was offshore somewhere. But he was supposed to be, he was promised that he would become a congressman, that they would back him. But I guess he started taking credit for the idea, and they said that kind of pissed them off. So anyway, Horace Mann in Massachusetts goes to Prussia, pushes for this. The governor of Massachusetts at the time actually got his PhD in Prussia. And also, this came out of, in Prussia, they lost the battle to Napoleon, and the reason that what they blamed it on was that the soldiers were thinking for themselves. So that's what it came out of, supposedly. And so Horace Mann brings this to Massachusetts. In 1846, the governor, who got his PhD in Prussia, makes school mandatory in Massachusetts. Before that, they had schools, but they were more like community schools that people put together. It wasn't government. It wasn't forced. I think taxes may have paid for some of it, but it was more of some communities had schools if they wanted them and some didn't. And back then, depending on what your profession was, you might not need much of an education, and you might be able to learn some of that through homeschooling, and then that's all you need, and there you go. I mean, depending on, again, or you just need training from a lot of people did what their parents did, and you need training from your parents, and that's kind of what those schools were, more that you grew up like your parents, kind of, that you to preserve the status quo. So what happened there was eventually, other states started adopting this system. And I have the timeline here with the year. Eventually, all 48 states, because this was before Hawaii and Alaska, had adopted it. I had the year. Fuck. My internet's like crashing. So from this Prussian model, essentially what they did was do the same thing. And this is from the beginning. What they wanted to do was not only have obedient students, but to remove, as I was saying, this is Gatto's words, but the capacity for intellectual and moral development, to get rid of the imagination, because imagination helps you to question things, to think about things differently, to think about different ways to do things, instead of just, this is how it is. You don't think outside the box. So as a result, I guess compulsory attendance laws were passed beginning in 1852, and there's my year, sorry. And by 1918, all the 48 states had adopted them. So it was mandatory that kids go to school. And what they were really doing was not educating them, but what was the word? I mean, essentially not uneducating them, but brainwashing them, indoctrinating them, and something dumbing down. That's what I was looking for. Basically, what they were doing was they were dumbing people down because that's what they wanted. Also, according to Gatto, there was another book by Darwin, not the one that he's known for. He wrote another book where he was saying that essentially it's all based on genes. You have essentially the people with the high IQs and everybody else, doesn't really matter. And that was essentially, the majority of people that were in these public schools, and they just wanted them to, grow up obedient, stay in the same type system, get a job. And, well, I guess it was different depending on when you're talking about, after the economic or the Industrial Revolution, things changed to a point, and the type of jobs people were probably pushed into. And they're doing that now. I mean, they're analyzing kids and pushing them into different areas. I mean, they're going to know by the time you're in second grade that, oh, you should be doing this when you graduate. So essentially, that's what they wanted. And really what it did was it goes all along with the whole big picture of creating an elite class and then having all the dumbed down regular people, just as society is now. And of course, there are people that, the middle class was built and things like that. But it still doesn't compare to the elite at the top and the amount of money that the elite have compared to the middle class. And essentially, I mean, that's what it became. And it became keeping people in their place, keeping people in this system. And in their place doesn't mean necessarily if you're poor, you're going to be poor, but in the same system, like you go out and get a job and work 9 to 5 and get married and have kids. And I've talked a little about this before. In this whole system that you're pretty much brainwashed into, or conditioned, I think would be more appropriate, conditioned into being a part of. And this is what people do. And people go to school and people get, and now I think with Common Core, the dumbing down is even worse. And with Common Core, they're collecting all this data. But most of these people that are fucking protesting Common Core, I don't know how many of them, I seen a presentation on Common Core. I never heard anything. I mean, I knew about it already, but I didn't hear anything about Prussia. I didn't hear anything about dumbing down, going back to, they look at, oh yeah, schools were great when we went to school. Fucking schools were really fucked up when they went to school. If you look at, you didn't have police in the school, but you had teachers like hitting people. You had things like that going on. So you could take any time throughout the history of schools, and they were always fucked up. So let's not, you may have learned more, in a sense, that the things kids are learning now, I mean, they're dumbing down more and more, that you could say, well, when it first started, that yes, they wanted that indoctrination and control, but they learned how to improve it, and they kept taking it to where it's at now. Another thing that Gatto mentioned was like test scores, and how what they do is it looks like, test scores are going up or that staying the same or whatnot. But what they do is they just make the test easier. So you can't compare, 10 years ago to today or something like that. So they wanted to start dumbing people down from the beginning, but I look at it as just like anything else, just like freedom, that you start at where you start at and you take one step at a time, because they're in this for the long term. This is a generational thing. So the same with schools, where they had to start somewhere, and they look at it, well, this is too much. We got to keep dumbing shit down. And you get to where you're at now. And he had mentioned the teacher from Stand and Deliver. If people have seen the movie Stand and Deliver with Edward James Olmos, where he took basically kids from, the ghetto and taught them calculus. And it was in his teaching methods. And he talked a lot about that. And what I got from that was that their teaching methods are designed to dumb you down. He mentioned memorization, and what's the point? When you take a test, the majority of tests you're taking, and probably now it's even more, are not about critical thinking or anything like that. It's basically memorizing, and it's memorization, and that's it. Is that learning? No. So what I got from him, at least to this point, and I hope to read his book, and then maybe we'll talk more about him as well, but is that the teaching methods are designed to dumb kids down as well as indoctrinate them and brainwash them into being obedient. So it's not just what they're teaching, it's how they're teaching it and the teaching methods that are used at the same time. And really, listening to him, it's like homeschooling is like your only escape. I mean, seriously, there's people obviously that can break out of it. I mean, I went to public school, but, and a lot of people did that have the same beliefs, but I'm sure there's still things that I have been, indoctrinated with that I don't even realize. And it's hard to break out of all that. So that's the one thing I think people fail to even think about as well, that they design, I think, teaching methods. Because he mentioned, being able to learn something in a certain amount of hours. Like he taught, he was a substitute teacher, and he taught them time in Spanish or something. And he's like, I can teach anybody this in this amount of hours. And it was about the teaching method. And that was about the movie Stand and Deliver as well, where you're taking a bunch of kids that, poor kids, some of them were in gangs, whatever, and you're teaching them advanced calculus. So it was the teaching methods is what really got it. But it's like they're fucking your brain all up with their teaching methods and the way everything is designed. So that's all we got for tonight. Tomorrow we will be joined by Ken Shorgen, who joins us every other week to talk about geopolitics and the economy. So be sure to tune in for that. Ken always has some great information, and we always have great discussions when he's on. That's probably right now the best show because it's the only show that I actually always have somebody else on is when Ken comes on. But he has great information. Check him out at the Daily Economist, and he'll be on tomorrow. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Anybody that takes the time to listen. And hopefully you'll be listening tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
Sometimes the use of force is necessary You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous